I'd like to welcome everyone and call to order the Climate Protection Working Group meeting on Tuesday, August the 13th. And we'll start off with the land acknowledgement. On Tuesday, August 13th, 2024, we acknowledge that this sacred land on which Smiths Falls is now located has been a site of human activity for over 10,000 years and is rich in Indigenous history. This land is the ancestral and unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe Nation. We are grateful to the Algonquin ancestors who cared for the land and water in order that we might meet here today. We are also grateful to the Algonquin people for their contribution in the making of the Rideau Canal, which runs through Smiths Falls. We are mindful of broken covenants and the need to reconcile with all our relations. Together, may we care for this land and each other, drawing on the strength of our mutual history of nation building through peace and friendship, being mindful of generations to come. Okay, we'll move on to the agenda. Are there any additions to the agenda? No, done see. Okay, I recommend a motion to approve the agenda as circulated. Nate, and seconded by.
Oh, hi.
Hello. Peter, did you second? Thank you.
Yep. Okay.
All in favor? Motion carried. Nope, you go right ahead.
Yes.
Okay, and on to the adoption of the minutes. I'd like to recommend a motion to adopt minutes in case, unless there were any amendments that needed to be done. Moved by Nate, seconded by Peter. All in favor? Motion carried. Wonderful. Welcome.
Thank you. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. Okay, are there any disclosures of monetary interest? None noted for the minutes. And we'll move on to priority item number 1, which is the milestone update.
Okay. So, update on the milestone minutes. Right. So, for milestone 1, essentially, we were looking at a summary of the GHG emissions inventory for both the community and the corporate side. And that included emission intensity values, a summary of data sources, and a description of the methodological assumption, emissions, and other relevant data. And the milestone 1 was looking at a 10-year business as usual forecast with the baseline year of 2021 and the mid-year of 2025 and a timeline of 2030. So all of this is pretty much preliminary information that would be necessary for the completion of milestone 1. And here, just an overview of everything that was assessed. And the only things that were not included for the community aspect was the waterway navigation, the railways, urban tree canopy, and wetlands. And I'll get into more details later. So this is looking at just the data for the corporate side, which has already been discussed. But this is just essentially an overview of what was discussed for the corporate side, for the data emissions and energy use. Now, in the appendices in the report for the milestone 1 update, it has the same information. This just allows you to see in more of a visual aspect, and there's color. And here, I tried my best to maximize the size of the graphs as best as I could. So let me know if it's harder to read on the screen or if there are issues with reading in the appendix.
Sorry, Richard, I'm late. So are those same graphs in the?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. Just different colors because PowerPoint likes to do that, but the data is the same. And then looking at the corporate side, we're looking at the energy use by source. And then we have the business as usual forecast with the baseline year 2021. And this is just a preliminary thing. This is just automatically created from the milestone tool. So when you populate the information for corporate emissions, this is the business as usual forecast that they generate for us. And then looking at the community emissions, this is overall. So this is more of the data that you haven't really seen yet. And then, yep.
And what's the projected population growth over the 10 years?
The projected population growth over 10 years based on the land use study would be closer to 13 in 25 years.
25 years.
Yeah, so 13,000 instead of 10 that we're roughly hovering over right now.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not seeing
Are you all
a...
comfortable with that?
I would say it's probably like, it's hard to forecast, but I know the our old official plan had very modest growth rates, and our land use study really, I think, was based on the older official plan. And it went till like 2034, and we've already needed the residential, well, the addition of new residential units target set. So that was done by 2022. I think we had the 2034 numbers exceeded. So the last 10 prior to the most recent 5 or 6 years. So I don't know if it's. I suspect probably going to be light, but I don't. I guess if we're going to base it on some form of data, I guess reflecting on that for now. I say if our new official plan comes out with forecasted numbers, we could always update the plan to the new official plan, which would be probably late this year, early next year.
Oh, okay, that's good to know.
Middle of doing the renewal.
Yeah. Okay.
Just a second. Okay, and then here, just a graphical version of the same thing they've seen in the charts. So to read it on the left, so we're looking at emissions here. So for wastewater and sewage, it's 45%, and that's the orange, just the biggest section. And then if you're going at, say, clockwise, we're looking at solid waste, and that would be 14%. And energy industries would be 3%. And then manufacturing industries and construction is 10%. And residential is 14%, and on-road transportation is also 14%. Yep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's
I was just
okay.
looking at the graph.
No, that's all right. I'd like to think that Hershey's is a forward-thinking company and is taking into account the impact on climate change on their still to be open new plant. But I don't know that. So we don't have a sense yet what they're taking their time, which is their prerogative. It might be another year before we really fully understand what they're going to do. But it may or may not have an impact on the manufacturing side. It's that big of a facility that it.
You will notice it. You're right.
You could know it. And so I always wondered if there was a way, I guess I should look at their website to see if they have a statement about climate change and what their climate, and then hold them to that.
Well, what we could do is that when we're at the point of drafting the climate action plan and getting input from stakeholders, that we include them in that conversation so that we sort of plan their production into any recommendation that we propose.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Absolutely.
I think that's the only way we can really capture that.
Also, if we wanted to make projections in the interim, we could look at the data from when Canopy was occupying the space, and that was an indoor farm. So every 4x4 space had a 1,000-watt light over it. And if we can, I think, safely assume it would be less than a quarter of that, and that gives you a starting place in terms. It's definitely going to be a lot less than it was then. So, but yeah, it's a valid issue to try to factor.
Okay, I'll note that for the record.
Richard, you just clarify the community emissions inventory.
Yes.
We see wastewater and sewage being 0.83, but it's 45%. You're using the corporate wastewater number as part of our total emissions, or how's that? I don't understand the question.
Okay, so for the community, for the emissions, the wastewater was for the whole community, not just the corporate side. So the corporate was looking at the production of, say, what was filled in with their bins for the community, for the corporate side. And for the community, that was everything else in terms of the emissions.
So right now, because you have the emissions of wastewater and sewage at 0.83,
I see what you're saying.
but that doesn't represent 45% of our community totals.
I
On
see
page
what you're
10.
saying. I'll have to look at it again closely. There may have been an error somewhere. Oh, I see it. I'm just trying to understand where it would have come from. I'll have to look at it closely again and come back to you on that one.
Okay, so expect that a 0.83 may not be correct.
No, I don't think so.
But do we count, if we're already counting water and wastewater in our corporate reports, that's where we are expelling energy to treat water and wastewater.
So for the corporate side, it's really just looking at how much garbage is being produced, not wastewater. So it's really just the waste production for the corporate side.
Well, no, but if you go back to the previous slide where our water, the energy consumption at our water and wastewater facilities are our biggest consumers of natural gas, and therefore our biggest emitters.
Right, so that would be reflected in the community aspect in terms of how much we're producing as a community as a whole. So the number may not be necessarily reflected here. And
We are expelling that energy corporately, even though the water is being consumed by the community, and the wastewater is being produced by the community. So we're counting twice if we use the energy required in both categories.
no, so the energy is not being counted twice. So when you look at the corporate side, it's really looking at how much waste is being produced in terms of our facilities and how we're collecting in their bins. For the corporate side, is really looking at how the facility is producing energy and how it's operating. So we're not counting it twice. And so for the communities, really have the processing plant is producing and consuming energy.
We're ultimately in control of how we provide energy to those plants.
I mean, yes, it is true, but we're also in control of our streetlights, but the streetlights benefit the whole town. So sometimes it's hard to figure out if it makes sense to keep it in the corporate or the community, because you could have had the streetlights in the community, but it benefits the streetlights for the corporate side, but it benefits the community. So I don't really think it made a difference.
But I would say everything we do benefits the community, right? So all of our facilities are all here to serve the community. Whether it's water and wastewater, whether it's our community centers, even this building, I guess, really. So all of our emissions, all of our corporate emissions really are here simply to serve the community.
So you're saying that you see the wastewater as a corporate emission as opposed to a community emission?
Yeah, well, because I think that we are the ones who are even the community is going to utilize the water or produces the wastewater. We ultimately we're in complete control. If council decided tomorrow we're no longer going to burn natural gas in our wastewater facility, and we are going to change the whole system and spend many millions of dollars, we could do that. But it may not be the wisest thing at this stage, but we could do it. So I'm looking at what do we have within our control, and that would be all the corporate assets they all support the community. They're all designed to be here for the community, but ultimately we have control over our emissions to some extent.
I don't disagree with you, but
Sue and then Nate.
Yeah, so granted, it's a few years ago, but when I was doing this for Tay Valley, the issue was who controls it, as Sean is expressing, right? And small communities like ours have flexibility with FCM, BCP, to decide where you want to apportion that. And so I would agree with you totally that when it's the decision of the town to do something, then it falls within their purview, their control. And so it should fall there. So when you look at the community wastewater and sewage being so high, if I lived here, I would not have any capacity to change that, right? Because I don't have any control. as an individual, but
Other than what individuals can do to reduce their personal consumption.
But
That's
that's not going to, it's, on a personal level, that's not going to result in that 45%. That extreme, right? It's most of that is coming from a corporate decision. So I would check back with PCP about how to allocate that, Richard.
Yeah.
It's the same issue with waste, solid waste.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean.
Referring, it's the same issue with wastewater and sewage, right? So because it falls within the municipality's control.
So you're thinking that for the community side, it really should just reflect how the community is contributing, but not what the corporation has control over?
I would, maybe I'm sure. I would say so because it's, if we're going to set a corporate target of reducing our corporate emissions by, let's say it's 30% by 2030, the only way we can do that is by reducing the emissions in our water and wastewater.
Fair, that's true.
They're the biggest producers of energy, biggest carbon footprint, right? So otherwise, how will we reduce the corporate? If that's part of the community inventory, we're ultimately reduce the community side if we are making those decisions corporately.
Nate?
So I agree with what's being said fundamentally, but I think it just highlights what I was trying to say earlier, that it doesn't make sense to separate corporate and community emissions. And I feel like even just hearing this conversation, it feels like a shell game where you know what I'm saying? We can move it to one or the other, but like, again, corporate emissions is roughly 6% of what we're talking about. And we're all in the same town. It's all going into the same atmosphere. When we talk about reducing corporate emissions dramatically, but not doing community, it feels disingenuous, frankly. I feel like we're creating a system where we can present having done a lot more than we've actually accomplished. And I mean, I love the numbers of modeling. I live it more than most people. And I find this like eye-crossing confusing to try to understand. And I think, yeah, I would just strongly recommend we go back to just not separating corporate and community, to just keep it simple and clear to everyone. If we're not going to do that, I think when we list percentages, we should list the total amount, because like 59% of 6% is a much, much smaller number than the community one. And it makes it much harder to understand what any of these actually mean.
Good point.
Yeah, I'll respectfully disagree, Nate, from the standpoint that if the corporate emissions are lost within the greater total because it's so minuscule, I'm not confident future councils will be motivated to make the changes necessary to reduce their carbon footprint. In other words, why are we going to spend $3 million, whatever the number is, let's say, to go from a natural gas system, pelletizer system at our wastewater plant to a more climate-friendly solution if it's only going to make this much difference in the overall emissions within our community? So I think we need to compel future councils to be focused on what we can do corporately.
If I could just respond to that, valid point, and I think like the only reasonable argument that I've heard about why we would separate corporate is that political imperative thing. And I think from a political standpoint, sure, it definitely makes it much easier to make that case. But I think honestly, like, you kind of just made my case for me, because if when you do the numbers accurately and you look at the full thing, it doesn't make sense to spend $3 million on that versus stuff we could do in food policy that would have a much bigger bang for the buck. That, like, the council should be made aware of that, and they should make data-driven choices that reflect the reality of the circumstance. So yeah, I absolutely hear what you're saying, but I take it in a different direction.
Well, what I could do is after this meeting, I'll revise the graph so you can have updated numbers in an email that's going to be sent out. So the information isn't terribly off here, just this one thing here. And I will include the wastewater into the corporate emission just so they have a better sense of what is in your realm of control. And at the solid waste as well, or just the wastewater?
The issue is who has control. And when it's the municipality that controls the management of whatever,
Right.
Solid waste, organics, whatever, then it resides with the municipality.
And we measure
But
that.
do check in with
PCP?
contacts PCP, because they can probably walk you through how to do it, right?
I will do that today. Okay. And so they actually created a business as usual forecast for the community as well that I'm getting to. And the number is 2022. I don't understand why it's 2021, but for all intents and purposes, it's going to be 2021 when looking at it. The number won't really change with respect to the baseline or with respect to the forecast. It'll just be a different number, really. No, it's harder to really understand what this number really means just looking at it, just because you only have a baseline and there's no other competing information to really assess how we're doing because it's just the first year. Yeah, so this is really just all the other subsectors aggregated into one massive graph here.
And are you saying that all that yellow is transportation?
On
Either-
road, yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Are we saying that, not you?
No, that's what the graph is saying.
No.
The yellow is the on road.
And that's on road in town, right?
Yeah. The reason why I didn't include, for example, the railways is that when I actually reached out to Via Rail and CPKT, they gave us information that was for Canada as a whole, but not specifically for Ontario. It's harder for me to do some sort of downscaling with that information, especially because they didn't make a distinction between if it was the rate of frequency of travel. Those smaller details I couldn't really find online. So it was really hard to really assess if it made any sense to include it because it wouldn't really be a holistic number for Smith Falls. I could do some more research and see if there's other ways that we could have that data represented, but for right now, just for the sake of time, I didn't think it would make sense to include it for the final climate action plan. Similar line of thinking when it goes to the boating. So the boating information is also interesting because what it would require is either if we had, I know Le Boat is private, so I'd probably ask them for that kind of information, but I don't know necessarily how forthcoming. And I'd also need to survey the populace to see of Smith Falls, how many people are really using the boats and how frequently. And also it's understood that for most of the Le Boat users are not actually residents of Smith Falls. So there's also that as well. So not being local residents and informal use and the fact that the information isn't readily available, it didn't really seem to be so pertinent. So that's why I didn't include the boating.
Richard, just a quick question going back to the on-road transportation. I could be just my color blindness, but is it on-road and off-road? Just with the yellow? I can't tell what's...
Okay, so there's no off-road. So the off-road wasn't included in this section. If you're looking at the legend, it is yellow, but
Okay.
you'd be seeing two yellows.
Yes, and they look the same to me.
Right.
Okay.
But the business as usual forecast only included the sectors that we had accomplished.
Okay.
So even though the legend is showing like a multitude of colors, we're only looking at a few colors here.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Peter?
This isn't on topic, but it is, when you reach out to the railways, do they have a specific, is this their climate change department or is it their public relations?
I don't know. So they said they have a sustainability officer. That's what they said.
Okay,
So there was a point of contact you could speak to if you wanted to get more sustainability information. There was the sustainability report that's done every year. So there's one for 2021. And this is only for Via Rail. I don't exactly know if CP Rail, CPKT has their own subsection for the environment. They probably do of some sort because they also have a sustainability report. But yeah.
yeah, thanks, I was just curious.
Sue, and then Sean?
On the Le Boat issue, I think, but I stand to be corrected, that in Europe they actually use electric engines.
I don't know, actually.
I believe so. And it's a few years ago that I read that. And so it occurs to me that, we would be better off here in terms of them not using diesel and using electric. And maybe that's something that could be addressed as you talked about with meetings with stakeholders, right?
So that's the thing. So even though we may not necessarily have the data, I don't think it precludes us from including recommendations to encourage, different kinds of transportation that's also energy friendly. So, encouraging, say, electrifying the boat fleet, for example, is not a bad idea.
It's in their plans.
Is it?
Yeah, when they announce,
Oh,
if you ask them to come in for a presentation and they'll talk about future, talk about the growth and they talk about the development.
it's specific to the boat?
And they can't, the other thing, sorry, Madam Chair, is that they have to ship these vessels from Poland where they can't find a North American, so that in itself adds, but they do plan to move towards electrifications. The last presentation I saw,
Great news.
but
Interesting.
in 5 years or in 10 years, or,
Fair, yes.
Sean, did you?
Now, Richard, just look at the overall community emissions at 58% being gasoline.
Yes.
So that is gas purchased in town or gas which is essentially burnt,
Burnt.
consumed in town?
Consumed. Consumed in town. So essentially all the inputs that were gasoline related were all aggregated together as this big chart. So they basically broke it down by fuel types. So gasoline or diesel or electric, but it's reflected differently for electric.
Sorry, just to follow up on. So, and zero diesel, but there is people buying diesel and using diesel in town.
Yes, but so
Fuel or-
in terms of how we were calculating the diesel only for using boats, for example, diesel for using train, diesel reflected in the data, but we're only looking at for transportation, it was only for gasoline for Esso.
Oh,
So that's sort of why you don't see diesel as a part of the whole process. Why is it just because we're looking at the Esso stations?
you just don't have diesel, I guess.
Well, the data didn't break down diesel versus not diesel.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, just to clarify, my understanding was the reason so much of that is transportation was because we got that from sales data.
That's right.
So it isn't just gasoline used in Smiths Falls. It's everybody commuting through town that stops and gets gas, everybody who drives out of town. All gasoline purchased within town, not about where it's used. It's just about where it's purchased.
That's correct.
Okay, because it would seem hard to comprehend
Yes.
the possibility that would be.
It's
that would be
It's a way high number. Like there's no way. At those numbers, it works out to something like $1,600 per household spent on gas. It can't be right. Like
not burned within the town.
no, definitely not. It's
I
like
think of the 9 square kilometers we are.
yeah. And that original data did have diesel. I don't know what happened to it, but the original data that we got did include. I remember because I did the fact checking on it, and there was diesel in the original numbers, just because of the trucks going through. Right? It was like I want to say it was like 8 or 9% compared to gasoline, but I can double check that.
yeah. We have 7 roads that lead in and out, and one of them is a provincial highway. It's where they cross the river. This is huge.
Definitely.
There was a question last meeting about speaking with Calibrate to see if they could give us a sense of who were the purchasers and if there was a number. So I did reach out to them, and they read the fuel pump meters, so they actually don't have a number on the postal codes or the number of uses because it's really just the meter that they're looking at. Yeah. So that's made it harder to break it down between here versus not here. So what I will do is I'll double check the numbers and I'll update the committee when I have the revised numbers, and I will incorporate the wastewater and the water in the corporate emissions and include the solid waste as well. And I'll check out the transportation numbers just to make sure that there's nothing fishy going on there. And I think that's really it for my update for the milestone 1.
Great, thank you.
Thank you. So now we're looking at the survey because I know that a lot of us had, well, I don't know if a lot of us, but a few of us had comments. And I tried my best to incorporate those as they came in. And I would love to just discuss essentially how this is going to unfold.
Okay, so we want to open the floor up. I know I saw comments from Nate and Sue and myself, but there could have been others that came in that I didn't see. So Nate, do you want to?
I'm sure, yeah, I can get it started. So thank you for your work. It's a great starting point. The thing that I think we talked about at the last meeting that I would just really reiterate is I think it's really important we have an education component in the survey. And that's, I wouldn't want to circulate it as written because it doesn't have a substantial education component, and I think there's a potential to get off on the wrong foot if we circulate it as written. I think we need an education piece to do it.
I hear you. My take on that is, how do we do that where we are able to educate the public but keep it concise? Because I liked your formatting when you circulated the original form with the background, the number scale, comments. It was great. But if we're doing that, how are we going to make sure that we have it concise enough where we have enough questions asked, enough information out there so that we're not necessarily missing some points, but also educating the public?
I think fair point. The way I would approach it is I think there's a lot of questions on there where I'm not clear why we would ask them.
Fair.
And I think we could remove everything that isn't goal oriented in terms of getting us to a place where we can set an objective can go. I think like the questions that get to the heart of what we should do next, because that's the whole reason we're doing this survey. So we can set objectives for the scope 3, right?
Can you look through it and give an example of what's not goal oriented so that we sort of like narrow it down?
So like, how freaked out are you about climate change? Like, I don't see why we would ask that question. I could see what I recommended was rephrasing that as explaining like the national objective is to get to net zero by 2050. How would you feel about us setting goals that meet that? How would you feel about us setting goals that fail to meet that? And how would you feel about us setting goals that exceed that? And those answers will actually tell us where we should set our goals. Just asking how freaked out you are, I don't know what we do with that information.
Fair point.
I would agree with Nate on that question. However, as I outlined in my submission, I think we have a few reasons for doing this. And it's not just to end up with the response to milestone 2. That's ultimately, yes, where we want to get to in the short term. But I think that the survey itself can actually function to engage the populace. I mean, I think right now, nobody yet knows that we exist.
Not officially, no.
No, we haven't done anything in the public. And so we need to do that. We need to do, as we were talking about, which is to plan some public engagement in the fall. And I see the survey as being a first step towards that. So as I've outlined, there's a few reasons for doing that. So should I re-outline that?
I mean, I have your comments printed, but yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And so this would be like the starting point. I agree absolutely with education at every point. Now, how much? That's a question.
A sentence, 2 sentences, yeah.
A preface, basically, a sort of a paragraph. We don't need to do a lot of detail at that point. I think we can be doing that education piece in the public forum. More detailed presentation about some of the essence, the basics of climate change, right? In terms of understanding, as I mentioned, in the public sentiment about climate, we have that data. We've got it coming out the yin yang, including our own survey here from Climate Network Lanark and the Perth and District Community Foundation, both of which have found a greater than 80% serious concern for climate change. There's no reason to think that Smith Falls is going to be that different. So I think we can run with that. Then there are some specific questions that I do think are valuable to us to understand and get towards the issue of the actions. We know nationally that more than 80% of people want to take climate action. They want serious action. So let's ask some questions which more than hint at that, but suggest to people that that's what we're about ultimately, is getting action taken, and that we will be in a position to help them, but we need to collect a little bit of data from them to understand what we can do.
Okay, so.
Is that making sense? And then there's also literally the issue of just collecting names and contact information, because we need to be building that database. We absolutely do. Because they are our ambassadors. They're who we're going to be inviting to come back to public sessions, and
Mhm.
inviting to take on and inviting to spread the word. Word of mouth is the strongest means of getting information out there. So we need to be building that database.
Right, I hear you. So the survey will be on the town website, and that has a means of getting people to put their information in. If we can create a question that way, they can definitely submit the information, as well as at the bottom of the page there would be a link to more updates on the survey or more updates on the climate action plan if they so choose. So that'll be part of the survey URL.
That's great. Yeah, good.
So I can definitely take a tweak and retweak some of the questions. Does anyone else have any comments on the survey structure so far?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would go at the preamble, after it talks about informing the town's climate action plan, I would add another sentence or phrase essentially, and guide the committee's recommendations as it comes to goal setting. So it will I think help inform the town's climate action plan, and will contribute towards the committee's recommendations to council as it relates to our targets or our objectives.
Okay.
And then I think to Nate's point, I guess that Sue has indicated too, I think maybe that question which speaks to their perception on council's responsibility to hit targets, whether hit to aim for. So here, if the goal is, we put an example in, if the global objective is to reduce emissions by net zero by 2050, or reduce by 49%, whatever, by 45% by 2030, should the town make a similar commitment?
So another part of this milestone 2 is really literally setting the targets, right?
Milestone 3.
Milestone 3
The milestone 2 is the survey so that we can do the targets in 3.
right. So right now I'm speaking with Greenscale, and I'm trying to understand what would be required in terms of the feasibility of these targets. So in speaking with them, they can give us an understanding of how realistic it'd be to set a number of targets. And so that is why I was suggesting that we do the survey now instead of waiting until we have what would be feasible, so that we can keep going along with the process and not waiting too long. So yes, it would have been ideal to have the survey results and then set the targets, but we can do both at the same time.
And
Sure.
I think where my question was coming around the targets was, we're in this, some of us eating, sleeping, breathing it every day, but in the community, we have to sort of meet people where they're at. And I'm not sure if we don't give them a number or a suggested number, I'm not sure that I would know, I don't know what's reasonable. Is 10% reasonable? Is 20% reasonable? So I like the idea of, I can't remember if it was Sean saying, this is what, federally what we're
According to
aiming
IPCC
for. Yes.
as a standards it's set.
Yeah, I think that would help people put it in context more if they're not even engaged in anything
Fair
related
enough.
to
Fair
climate
enough. Fair enough.
change.
Sorry,
So-
this one really.
Over here, Sue.
I'm quite sure Greenscale will come back with the same thing they have done for the county.
Oh, okay.
And they will lay out 3 means of selecting targets.
Okay.
Okay. One is aspirational, right? The other is sort of baseline, just about worst case scenario, right? And then the middle one is sort of a meld of the two of them. Okay? And globally, we have commitments to huge cuts, like 45% cut in emissions by 2030. This is 2024. Okay? Canada's emissions are still going up at this point. Canada has commitments to also cut its emissions by that same 45% by 2030. Okay? Even though our emissions are going up. The FCM PCP will recommend to us as a municipal organization doing a climate action plan that we target 45% reduction by 2030. Okay? That's what they say they want us to do. So that's part of what has to be outlined in that preface, okay? The county came back and against our opposition at Climate Network Runner and others' opposition, agreed to only, I think it was, if I'm remembering correctly, 10%
Yes.
reduction, right? That's tiddly squat. And we are talking, and I'm not getting overly dramatic here, we are talking about life and death. We really are. And if we don't go for aspirational targets, right? If we just go for the worst case scenario one, that's what we're talking about. We are making that decision that we're not going to go for full life, that we are going to go for more extreme flooding, more extreme weather, more extreme forest fires, more extreme deaths. We're making that decision, and we need to be clear about that. So the whole issue of target setting is huge, and I respect what Greenscale, we brought Greenscale to the county, what Greenscale will do. But just because they're a consultant doesn't mean that they're going to frame things in that same way, okay? So we just need to be conscious of that. And we need to be fully educating the community when we do this. So I'm not at all persuaded, in fact, that we need to be asking that in this survey, when this is our first foray to the public. Our very first foray. I think that's a burden that is unfair at this point, and that we need to be doing in the context of a bigger public forum, is talking about these issues.
It's a workshop.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sue. I would agree with what you just said. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, thank you.
That's what I was trying to say.
Thank you, Sue. I agree too. I think that it's really important that we frame this as a moral imperative, and it absolutely is life and death. And the message coming from the federal government isn't at all unclear on this. We are in a very real fight for survival as a planet, and I don't think we should focus on global plans. I think we should focus on what the Canadian objectives are. Like we should take our cues from the federal government, because by the way, they're offering to help pay for a lot of these things. But if the federal government has made specific commitments on reductions, I would think that the operating assumption would be that we would at least pull our weight and aspire to achieve those objectives. Like if our answer is no, we're not even going to try. I would find that morally shameful. I think definitely at a bare minimum, I would want to pull our weight and try to meet the federal objectives. I would also say, to the extent that there's innovation and technology that needs to occur in order to meet those objectives, the idea that a consultant is going to tell us what's real, what's obtainable is they would have probably told us the moon landing isn't obtainable. Like almost everything that requires a heavy lift is not something where if you sit back and say, oh, that's not real, like it's. So anyway, I think it's really important that we frame this in a moral framework. But beyond that, I know I'm beating a dead horse on this scope 1, scope 2, scope 3. As long as we're doing this in a scope 1, we are obscuring the reality of what we're actually talking about, and almost all the realistic things that we can do to actually lower our carbon footprint and actually meet the federal objectives, which by the way are scope 3, they're not scope 1. We have to approach it from a scope 3 to even have a coherent conversation about being in line with federal objectives. If we're only counting a small fraction of our actual footprint, what does it mean to reduce that by 20%?
Go ahead, Peter.
So for me, there's two things going on. One is the survey itself, and we can improve it. And I have some ideas. And the other is the process around that. And if we could keep them separate a little bit, for me, when we're ready. So having listened to you all for quite some time, I agree with you about the crisis. I wouldn't call it climate change. I would refer to it as climate crisis. So change the wording.
I like that.
And I think this committee goes to council in the next short while as we go to launch this thing. And we tell them our advice to you to help save the planet is to meet is to match Canada's goals. We're going for 45%. We're recommending that to the community. And anything less would be, wouldn't be honest or whatever we say. And then that's a public education. We get council to say, yeah, go out with that because we have to get this endorsed by them.
So when would you table it for a council discussion? Not to put you guys on the spot, but
Well, I would say once the survey results are in, I think we've got our milestones
Well, I was
set.
going to launch it
I think before.
at council.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe when we finish milestone 1.
Yeah,
Well,
so
then
I mean, like,
I think we need to establish our objective, our milestones, at minimum.
Well, I was just going as a public telling council what we're, like an update to council, and that's how we launched the, or anyways, that's the process piece. On the survey itself, I don't think it matters what gender people are. I don't.
So that question can
need
go?
that information, but if you're trying to make it shorter.
sure.
And I don't think it matters how well you think Smith Falls is currently addressing climate change.
Fair.
The don't know isn't there, and that's what most people would put if they have no idea. I don't know how much that will tell us. And then when you give it over to our PR people, or what do they call it?
Communications, yep.
There's some, the language is a bit
Oh, yeah,
complex.
yeah. I didn't address the language at this point just because it would
Yeah.
be harder to do.
Exploration of elaborate transportation, single occupancy, automated, like that's, I don't know. So I know they'll do, I'm not saying, they'll plain English or plain language.
It's plain language.
So on the survey, I would just, plain language, some of it I would put pictographs right into the survey.
Pardon?
I would put something,
Graphics, yeah.
graphics right into the survey to
Ooh, I didn't think
highlight
about that.
that. And I'd get rid of the gender, I don't know what that does. And then the process is, we should have just a topic on that.
Peter, did you have an opportunity to look at the questions that I added?
That you add,
Yes. I sent an email with,
no,
I took some out and I added some specific ones.
they're,
I can read them aloud if it makes it easier for the conversation.
Yeah?
Yeah, I can read. I have it here.
Okay.
Can I just ask maybe one thing? If we could maybe clarify and state the purpose of this survey so that when we have this discussion, we're all,
Oh, sorry.
because it's changed, if like, it started with maybe setting the reduction target rates and it sounds like maybe now we're removing that. So maybe if we could agree on what the purpose of this survey, what the outcome that we hope to achieve from it is.
Okay.
That, I think that would help me just,
So I agree. I think we like goal-oriented communication. We should focus on and so this is explicit. This is milestone 2. Right? So it's explicitly outlined in the PCP. Milestone 1, we get our established what the inventory is. Milestone 2, we reach out and do a public discourse about it. And with the information we get from the public, we talk to council and set and make recommendations for what targets should be. The council has to approve those targets and that is milestone 3. So like the community engagement, I think is really, really important and all that, but that isn't explicitly what this survey is for. This survey is to empower, it's a specific milestone whose goal is to get us through the third milestone. And if we don't get data from this that helps council make an informed choice about the third milestone, we've missed the mark, I think.
Sue, did
So
you
I'm
have
sorry, but I don't think this is part of milestone 2. Milestone 2 is literally just setting the targets. How we do it is our choice. Most communities don't do community consultation until just prior to the final report, right? The standard way of doing it, just rubber stamp it. This is an addition to, we're taking an earlier step. And the reason that I've been advocating for this earlier is so that we engage the populace now, right? In the issues and what we're trying to do and what we're ultimately asking them to do. And so anyway, back to the purposes. So I have 3 here, possibly 4. So 1 is to engage the populace. The second is to is to capture names and contact info, right, for down the road. The third is to collect some data and info that we may need now or want now to help our work going forward. And the fourth, and I'm not sure about this because of the issue that we talked about, was do we want to actually talk about the percent cut that we want to achieve right now? I'm still uncertain about that. Anyway, so those are the three purposes that I see for this. Do you want me to address the additional questions now that I have?
Sure.
I think it's better that way. Yeah.
Okay. So because I think this is helpful information, and I think that it informs the populace that we're thinking about actions that they can take, and we're thinking about ways to assist them. Okay? So, and this is provided we don't have this information already. So how many people in your household does the town have this information now? The average in the area is 2.1.
We're talking about Stats Canada information, or this is just specific?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for Smiths Falls, if you can. So that makes a huge difference in terms of thinking about energy consumption in a house and how you're going to address reducing it, right? Is it 2 people or 4 people? Anyway, so how many people in your household? It's a simple question. What is your primary heating system? Multiple choice. What's the age? What's your secondary heating system? Again, the age. Did you know, and this is the education part now, so did you know organic materials such as kitchen waste in landfills produces methane, a greenhouse gas 80 times stronger than right? Do you know that composting kitchen waste is the easiest and cheapest climate action you can take? Do you compost? Those sorts of questions. They're designed to motivate, right? If you don't, what are the obstacles? So that helps us in multiple choice, right? That helps us know what we can start to be addressing. How often do you buy food directly from a local farmer or producer, or shop at a local farmer's market or farm gate? Multiple choice list, right? Have you ever taken a particular action out of concern for the climate crisis? How important to you is receiving regular information on climate change, climate crisis, and on actions you can take to cut greenhouse gas emissions? Those are the additional questions that I wanted to put in the survey.
Questions or comments on those?
I think it's useful when most of the energy used in propane is for heating.
Mm-hmm.
So how much are you using? Those are critical. Unfortunately, we see that the only company who's been handing out dollars and so are calling people to say, hey, we can help you put in an air conditioner with some heat pump. Because they can still have
resources. And then we're going to go to council for an update on milestone 1, and we're going to milestone 2 later. Okay, so we're not bringing the survey to the council. We're just going to say this is who we are, what we're going to do, and this survey's coming. Just so I know that order of what we're going to ask questions. Last meeting, I think it was, we talked to somebody about the schedule for council and the budget planning. Yes. So that wouldn't be happening in this presentation, that would happen so how I understand it was that this report to council would be submitted on if they came back with lots of money in the future, and I think they report would be a budget request. So this doesn't say that this is what we've done so far, and it's certainly been completed, and there's also timing for budget, and it will be our budget request was completed. Any other questions there? Clear for me. Now I'm just going to talk about the urban tree canopy assessment report that was brought to council on the 6th of August. And essentially the report was using the photos of maps. Essentially the tree is photograph of the entire Eastern Ontario region. And we're specifically looking at the following comes to the tree canopy assessment. And the 3% are pretty complicated with the geometry, so this is used in 2019 2020. And the data shows that Smith Falls has a urban tree canopy coverage of 35% for the whole town. And for the mapping, it's actually broken into zones, so that it's broken into target specific areas for clean industry. trees over there, and it's got 50% of trees. Farmland, it's, so if you think about that, and that's a challenge here. If we just town property, it's very important all this data together. And then the outcome will be recommendations for public health action, so how we can look at our own programs and services and how we can make sure that we're including climate. It's primarily an adaptation because that's where we're at right now in terms of being able to sort of help from a health perspective. So once I get a little bit more information about next steps on that project, I'll definitely bring it back here. But I think it'll be helpful just in terms of supporting the work here in this community. Because we know that sometimes when you speak about health, that is a way sometimes for people to engage around climate change. You know, even if they're not more on the environmental side, they're seeing the impact it has on them through their health, and so that can definitely be a way to engage the population. So I'll definitely put that piece to the script. Any questions with that? I summarized it. It's a little longer than that, but you want to know specifics. It's all written down. Absolutely. Take that, but yes. And I'm sorry for you integrating these one of the deliverables is communication and partner engagement plan. So I have a feeling that yes, that will be a piece that right now they're in the early stages, so I don't believe there has to be partner engagement part yet, but definitely I can see that a big piece of it. So because we actually now have yes, yes, assuming of course the case. I think so, yes. Yes, I know the health is definitely connected to the needs of those that we outlined it. Just Leonard County Ranger adaptation plan. So yeah, I'll definitely, unfortunately I don't have enough news since I originally got this, but I'll try to get something for next meeting and see how further along it is. Any other questions on that? Just alongside the UK health one here, in terms of problem vision, it's like 5%, right? That's the entire year. It's a little bit because this also that would be an area that we should look into. Pretty much like wastewater. It'd be interesting to know actually if Christmas Falls Hospital has a climate action plan because a lot of healthcare agencies do have their own plans. They're starting to, I think transportation is a big emitter because of all of the equipment and supplies and that they're transporting back and forth. So I'm not sure. Maybe stakeholder report, I'm not sure. Yeah. Right. I don't think the county engaged the health system in its mitigation plan. I'm not sure. I'm right. We should do that when it comes to time. Low income retrofit program, C. So this was the query about the backlog. Yes, right, yes. So that was the policy recommendation, and then I can double check and see if it done work. And then they were that we can get it done, but I've actually seen it posted in there. So, yeah, follow up this target. All this was something that may have come from the line of that work and everything. You know, so I think we found a nice place for processes, and I think we as a less responsibility needs to be ramping up. No, I hear you, I just, they have it on posting schedules, I don't know when I say it's posted, it's posted.
sustainability committee, and make people understood what is involved in terms of the carbon emission. Actually, your daily things are very much connected with it. Yeah. And don't know how you feel about it, or you want also, if you do that presentation, should we say this is also part of this committee's work?
So this would be presentation to.
Sorry.
So this would be a presentation to where? Sorry, can you clarify where?
The J2S, the Journey to Sustainability Committee, has been presented a lot of climate change workshops and for environment workshop and so on.
Cool.
So we've been doing it, but I thought that this would be a good one to
bring it here to present to us.
basically. We just do it over Zoom. People can sign up for it.
Okay.
And then we can get that link to the town's website, to the committee website, and so on. And if we want to say, okay, this is because I found this thing here from the June minutes at the website.
Yeah, I think Nate put together this presentation,
Yeah.
right? Yes, okay.
That was the one I was absent, have to be in a medical appointment.
Oh yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So Peter, you're suggesting that
Yeah.
some of the information from this presentation could be useful to do some education with the community,
Right.
and that we could host a.
Yeah, and whether basically, because I found this one from this committee here, so that's why I bring it up here, right? And if we do make a presentation, then we can even say, well, this is part of the committee's work.
So
Yeah.
Peter?
is it the sustainability might take that information and put a workshop on around it?
Right. In other words, we host it, and if Nate is the one preparing it, yeah.
Real.
Real host.
Journey to Sustainability is part of Real. As a second Real, yeah.
Just, I don't know where Nate's source is.
He basically was adopting from Toronto.
I don't doubt it, I just,
Yeah.
whoever put it on, just,
Right. Yeah, I can have this, if you guys feel that this is, because I feel that this is good material to really understand about, what you can do with climate change. Yeah.
Their plan, I think they had taken their plan, their model, their population,
Downscaled it.
and just
Well,
scaled to our.
basically,
yeah,
it could be just use this as a focus and explain, well, how these numbers come about.
so all you're saying is that, and there's nothing to stop the sustainability committee from doing that.
Right.
Real. But you're saying, this is what I've learned through the town.
Right. So this we can say this is
Nate could
part
probably
of it, yeah,
post it to you.
yeah,
You do a good job.
yeah.
I went to one of yours on heat pumps, the woman from Westport. She was great.
Because soon you can open up to a lot of people, right? And no boundary, yeah.
I don't think part of your committee doing that.
Yeah. So if it's okay, then we'll start working on this. Or do we need a motion or something like this?
The we is real sustainability.
Yeah, we'll check with Nate.
But it's
Sorry.
not us.
Yeah.
What do you want this committee,
Oh.
if Real is doing this, what do you want this committee to do?
Promote it, like promote the event?
Because this one here is CPW milestone number 1. So I sort of look at this graph is compiled as part of the committee's work. So in a sense, then if Nate is presenting this is the work that he shared with the climate prevention working group.
That was an alternative to our discussion. It wasn't the
Final work.
final.
So we can
His
share the.
view on,
Yeah, I think he was proposing scope 3
That's right.
as opposed to
Right.
scope 1 and
Yeah.
use that graph, which
so it's
which
not
everybody.
committee's work. We discussed it here, but it wasn't our work.
Yeah, we're not formally adopting Nate's proposal.
Okay, all right. Because part of the thing here is, if you say you have 12 followers, we want to expect.
No, I was teasing.
So the more connections we made
Yes.
with this committee, and this work was actually prepared and shared in the committee, right?
Right.
So if you
It
ask,
doesn't make it a committee report, is what I'm saying.
oh, okay.
It was information one of the members brought
Oh,
to the
okay.
committee.
So this is part of the work from within this committee.
Right. It's,
Yes.
it's an internal document.
Yeah,
It's the
it's
same
not,
as-
it's not the committee's report, which
Right.
is
Right.
yours.
It's
That's
the
right.
same as Joanne sharing the 3 health units work on, that would make a workshop, but it wouldn't be this committee's work.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Mhm.
Just to,
Yeah. Anyway, well, because I think the information like this helps. Yeah. And we just,
talk to Nate.
well, some connection with, because members of the committee, period.
Yes. I like the idea though of, because there's a few ideas, that could be a social media post, or that could go on the website, or here's a Zoom idea. Could we maybe have a communications or an updated communications plan to sort of track out
Okay.
what all things, so we can
Okay.
evaluate, at least what-
Options? Yeah.
Yeah.
I like that. I can bring it
Yeah,
next
like-
committee meeting if that
yeah,
helps.
that would be great. And
And
if
it
we plan on
basically-
doing X amount of posts per whatever month on this topic or
Yes.
that topic or whatever, and then we can have it in one area and we can kind of see where we're at with.
I like that.
No, that would be really good.
And we can
We can
include more of
start
the.
putting information out.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Okay.
I'm sorry, Madam Chair, I was late and I have one piece of new business.
Oh.
Can I add it? Is that?
Absolutely. Can I recommend the motion to add one piece of new business?
No chair.
Okay. Can I have a mover, seconder? Peter? Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So just, I guess, an announcement to let people know that you know. So Climate Network Lanark is seeking a new general manager. Our general manager of the last 2 years is returning to her previous iteration as business coach. And so we're looking for somebody part-time, basically. We have a job description on our website. And we're also seeking 2 new board directors as part of just our general evolution in that. And then we also will be looking for a second person for our climate concierge program, which is really good news. So,
Paid person, like a contract.
yes, definitely.
Sorry, Sue, I thought you were adding a priority issue, but it was part of your update, right?
Okay.
Sorry.
Sure. Yeah, no, it can be. I wasn't sure myself.
Yeah.
Well, we'll get it in the minutes somewhere.
Yeah.
I'll record it. All good.
Okay.
Thank you.
So this part of the roundtable thing,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
May
You have
I
another
carry
round?
on with
Yes,
roundtable?
you may.
I'm sorry, I didn't realize. I thought you were finished, Peter. I apologize.
No. It's part of round table sharing and so on. I'd like to announce that Rideau Roundtable is going to have an intern that we call biochar production and research specialist.
Oh wow.
So we're going to have this person for 6 months. And hopefully we'll be able to use the town's new biochar kiln, produce biochar, inoculate it with appropriate species and use it for bioremediation for the soil problem in Town's compost website and others. And hopefully, we're going to be able to use part of the inoculated biochar for the mini forest so that we can actually monitor the difference in growth rate.
Right, good.
Yeah. So
Interesting.
this one, and we also have another intern that is going to be working on what we call Eco Literacy Center.
Like
That
that.
we're working with 5 neighboring libraries and concentrating particularly on children from grade 1 to grade 6. And the round table will be providing field trips, wetlands, and so on. Libraries doing follow-up with on-land study.
Wow.
And one last good news is we actually were able to get a grant that helps with building up for Paddlefest and the Voyager Canoe Tour.
Excellent.
That's good. Awesome.
Any other round table updates from anyone?
No.
No. Okay, so I'll recommend a motion to adjourn the meeting at 4:03. Can I have
Okay.
that moved by Steve, seconded by
Sure.
Stu? All in favor? Motion
Okay.
carries. Thanks, everyone.
I'll just let Tech know.
If everyone's looking for a good, fairly short summer read that's fairly related to everything, is